Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Theodore, and welcome to the June astrological forecast. I cannot believe it's June, guys. This is amazing. I think the spring into the summer is a really epic time, astrologically speaking, considering where we've been with April's solar eclipse and all of the astrology in Aries and Taurus that most of my channel since I started it, it's really a lot of what I talked about the first couple of weeks I had the channel up and running, which is beautiful because I feel like I jumped back into the YouTube world at the perfect time to really start discussing really, really historic shifts. And at a moment with that solar eclipse and the Jupiter Uranus conjunction being such a profound trigger point for so many things that are going to be rippling into the future. But now we find ourselves in June. And May was actually, pretty easy, to be honest. I feel May was the hangover month, but while we were in the hangover phase, and we had an integration phase with Mercury, after it was done retrograding, the integration phase lasted up until about May 15th. So the hangover, in my opinion, officially ended there, astrologically speaking. And other than that, I feel we've just been talking about, the lingering Jupiter and Taurus. We've been talking about, the ingresses of Mercury into Mercury and Venus into Gemini. Of course, Gemini season has been around for, while I'm recording this video on May 22nd, Gemini just happened, a couple of days ago. But June 1st, we're already going to be heavy into Gemini energy. So a lot of May was really about getting out of this hangover phase from March through April. And then prior to March, really just preparing ourselves for the solar eclipse. Like, I really feel there was such a big preparation period. And now that May arrived, or when May arrived, we were in that hangover phase. We were feeling inspired because the astrology was going to get lighter in some ways, because Mars in Aries is still, right now, to this day that I'm recording this video, still, kind of just there. And honestly, parts of June, like, I want to say, I'm not even sure, I think most of June or a good chunk of the beginning of June, Mars is still in Aries, guys, which is its home turf, and it's a wild card. But then it'll soon, enter Taurus with Uranus, but nothing else is happening in Taurus. But still, we cannot underestimate Mars and Uranus together in Taurus, because I think that is still going to be a very hot, no pun intended for Mars, hot trigger point for Uranian activations and the Uranian story in Taurus all of these years. So Mars is just going to add more flames there. It's going to be a little more grounded, but still, Mars is still going to be very active. But as May ended, we have the big ingress from Jupiter in Taurus into Gemini. We have Venus, who shortly followed after, and Mercury, who shortly followed after that. And really, this is the kind of the beginnings of June. And June, end of May into June, we are dealing with air energy at a dominant level. And Jupiter is the king of the party. It is the king of the party of air. And we haven't had air energy like this for months and months and months, guys. And Jupiter has not been in an air sign for years. So this is a profound moment of mutable, expansion in many, many ways. And for the beginning months of June and throughout all of June, because Jupiter is going to be just getting itself started, and with Venus and Mercury coming home to Gemini, this ingress is going to be very, very loud. And I'm sure by the time you watch this video, I mean, if you're watching this right now, Within May 23rd, 24th, you definitely became a member on Patreon. So thank you for becoming a member. But if you're watching this on YouTube, then this has been released. I'll probably release it May 31st or June 1st. But yeah, guys, we are in the age of air in regards to Jupiter's, time being in an air sign. And with Venus and Mercury involved, it's just that much more potent, So whatever's going on in Aries still, and whatever's going on in Taurus still, all of the attention really is on Gemini energy now. And a lot of June is going to be heavily emphasized, I'm sorry if I didn't say that correctly, the emphasis is going to be heavily on Gemini. And then, of course, when we get into Cancer season, we will have Venus and Mercury follow with the sun in that element as well. So June is I like June. I do. I really do like June. I think this is the month we've been waiting for, post-eclipse season, post-retrograde story in Aries, Mars in Aries, because by the middle to end of June, Mars will be in Taurus, so it'll be out of its domicile sign. And then when Cancer season begins, Jupiter will be alone in Gemini, kind of just, getting comfortable. But yeah, guys, I'm excited for June because it's going to be like, okay, now we're finally in a new age, because until that Jupiter ingress into Gemini, we really we're still, the hangover phase was over in May. But still, until Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury get out of Taurus, we're still lingering around in that same energy almost that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction was a part of and all of that stuff. Once everything gets out of Taurus into Gemini, we're in a new age. And I say that very loosely. We're not really in a new age, but because that's really what Pluto's all about. But But I think you understand what I mean. The massive shift from Arian, Taurian to Gemini is part of this massive end of May, June story. It is a massive part of the shift in our lives and the collective. So let's begin. I really don't want to make this a super long video. I'm sure you already know how long it is because before you clicked on it, you saw the little time of like how long the video is, but I'm recording this now and I have no idea how long this video is going to be. But personally, I don't think these videos need to be hours long, an hour long. So I'm going to try to cruise through this, give, intuitive insights that are as precise as possible so you can just sort of get a picture of what we're going to be dealing with in June. Because you know me already, I will be decoding and deciphering and, really getting specific in other videos that I put on YouTube and really getting into the nitty gritty of some of these transits. So I don't want to spend all my time and energy, trying to pick apart a lot of this stuff, for this forecast. The forecast is a forecast for a reason, in my opinion. It's just like an overview, like telling, showing the weather. We don't know if it's actually going to rain or a 40% chance rain. We don't know what's going to happen, what these weather guys do. But with astrology, of course, we can get specific, especially if you're here dealing with me. But, there's only so much detail I can share, But every date that I have that I'll be going over today, there will be a chart for that date on the screen. So let's get right into it. Okay, guys, let's begin this June forecast officially. Now, before I start, I just want to say two things. One, if you're watching this on YouTube, I just want to let you know that this video is sponsored by the like button, the subscribe button, and the comment section. Those are totally free. My sponsors are super generous and they're giving them away for free. So please feel free to partake in any one of those three. And even if you want to share this with someone, that would also be, my sponsors are totally okay with that. And second, guys, to more in tune with the forecast itself, I just want to say that Pluto will be trining Jupiter the entire month practically. Towards the end of the month, Jupiter will be within a 4, 5, 6 degree orb that to me wouldn't be considered a true, aspect, because for me, I like to have a three degree window, a 3 orb window to really consider like a conjunction, a square, a trine, etc. So by the end of the month, Jupiter will be at like 5 or 6 degrees, I think, and Pluto will be still retrograding backwards. But that's something to keep in mind. Jupiter and Pluto will be in a very powerful trine, and Venus's ingress into Gemini will also be, will be trined with Pluto. And then when Mercury ingresses into Gemini, that will also, be trined with Pluto. So Pluto is going to be hitting Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter the longest throughout these initial beginnings of June. Now, at the end of May, we already started to see this, of course. The Pluto trine influence at the end of May has already hit Jupiter, has already hit Venus, which is moving a lot faster, of course. But this is part of the story, which is why in my, I think, Jupiter and Gemini, one of my videos on YouTube, I talked about how this is in the beginning stages of the Jupiter ingress, and with Venus and with Mercury, even though they're moving very, very fast, and with the Sun, really, that just ingressed in the Gemini. Pluto is going to be adding a layer of transpersonal transformation that will be unique for everyone, depending on where Gemini is in your life. And what I mean by transpersonal that it just means that, like, on a very deep personal level, there will be a shift, there will be an understanding, there will be an intuitive knowing of something shamanically changing. And I say the word shamanic all the time, and I'm not necessarily talking about, the lineage that I've studied, because shamanism is very important to my well-being and my grounding and my physical health, really, but also a very big part of my spiritual health. And depending on the culture of shamanism, it's just, a word for transforming, bringing the unconscious to the conscious, making something that's sick become healed. And these types of shifts can happen in any realm of possibility. So Pluto is, in my opinion, the shaman of the planets, along with Uranus, to be honest, too, because Uranus is like the lightning bolt fast awakening, the Tower card in the tarot. It is the sudden revelation of a shamanic, moment, where Pluto is more of the longer process of shamanic transformation, or just transformation in general. So these trines, I think, are going to really impact us on a deep level, and Pluto is really going to make that, kind of known to us. It may not be so in your face like a Uranus aspect, but it'll be like there, and you'll kind of know it, So let's keep that in mind, that energy is occurring constantly throughout this month, especially with Jupiter. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. So June 2nd, we have a Venus Cazimi in Gemini, Aries moon conjunct Chiron and Mars. So Mars is still very much active June 2nd. The Venus Cazimi in Gemini is beautiful. It just means that the sun will be supercharging Venus, so we can expect a lot of the Venusian qualities in our life, in that part of your life, to be amplified. It's very auspicious Cazimis. And to be honest with you, there's Cazimis that just stay around. Like, I think Venus, let me just look here. The Venus Cazimi, the sun and Venus stay together for days, so it'll, the sun will move a little bit quicker, and then Venus will move a little bit quicker, but then they keep meeting each other, degree. They keep meeting each other for a prolonged Cazimi, which means to me that the Venusian quality and very, very, the potency of Venus in Gemini in that part of your life is going to be very activated for days. A lot of the beginning parts of June, we have this Venus Cazimi, and with Jupiter, so we're dealing with expansion, we're dealing with Venus, we're dealing with the sun amplifying each other. And, this could be great for love, falling in love. This could be great for amplifying things you're in love with. This could be amplifying creativity, inspiration. And of course, because we're dealing with Gemini, we can be talking about, the way how this can all be translated into communication and how we integrate things mentally. And now we have an Aries moon conjunct Chiron and Mars. Like, typically I wouldn't bring in like little moon transits to like a monthly video, but this is significant because it's happening on the Venus Cazimi, the first time the Venus Cazimi is happening. And whenever we're dealing with Chiron and Mars, the Chiron has been a huge part of the story of the last couple of months' astrology. The fight for identity and something that needs to be healed and unveiled, and Mars is really activating the fires of Aries still. So this, depending on what's happening in Aries still for you, I just think that Mars might reactivate something that the solar eclipse did. And I think this could be a moment where we really can take control in a more dominant way of whatever maybe that storyline was in Aries for you. And with the moon there as well, our emotions are going to be in the game. We're going to feel some of this on a very deep level, which is good, because I feel like unless we feel some stuff, unless we have that feeling, we really can't transform anything. We have to, think, then that thinking has to turn into a feeling and an emotion, and then we really have to believe it and, embark on that journey of healing with Chiron there. And then Mars is just giving us permission to, really stick the sword in the ground and to kind of just take action, and to really be clear on something regarding that story in Aries for you. So, it really just all depends on your placements and what's going on in your life. But Mars will be alive and well as it hits Chiron, just like Mercury did. So maybe think to what Mercury was doing. What was Mercury's storyline for you during the retrograde? Because let's just put Mars, replace the Mercury with Mars and see, what that's going to be. I think Mars might allow the action to be taken on what was only being contemplated with the mind with Mercury, if that makes any sense. Now, June 3rd, Mercury enters Gemini, finally, home in Gemini. The Venus Cazimi continues, and then the moon is exalted in Taurus. So I mentioned the moon again because it is exalted in Taurus. The Cazimi continues with Venus, and Mercury finally leaves Taurus and gets into Gemini. So in a nutshell, I just feel like all that Venus stuff I was just talking about, and the amplification with the sun, and and Jupiter, of course, expanding all of this, I just feel like June is going to really open up a lot of hearts. And, a lot of creativity and a lot of connections with others are really, I don't know, I just feel like so many of us are going to meet new people or become inspired to want to be a part of like new things. Yeah, I don't know, it just really depends on what Gemini is doing in your life. But Mercury joining is just going to amplify the mental stimulation, the mental connections, and the understanding within yourself certain key things, And the moon being exalted in Taurus the same day, to me is a wonderful trigger point for, just a day of flow, And while the moon is still in Taurus, those couple of days it will be in Taurus, I just feel like that's going to be a really wonderful couple of days that where I feel like comfort will be maybe a key word. Even though Jupiter, the Gemini story is going to be wild at this point, we're really going to be feeling so much there. An exalted moon in Taurus, kind of really grounds things a little bit. So I think we're going to feel, grounded. I think we're going to feel, and I don't know what grounded looks to you, but just for a lunar cycle in general, for a lunar transit, to have it in Taurus most specifically, I feel like that just brings a lot of opportunity for things to enter in your reality that can provide some comfort in your life. I don't really know how else to say it. And then, of course, whatever Taurus is in your birth chart, really that's where you're going to feel it the most. And yeah, guys, that's what I have for June 3rd. That's going to be an exciting day, especially when Mercury enters the party and, really amplifies its home turf. Now, June 4th, Mercury conjoins Jupiter, and the cazimi of Venus continues 3 days in a row. So Mercury conjoins Jupiter, which, we're going to see an amplification of the mental. We're going to see things particularly in that part of your birth chart where, I just feel like this is where any psychic revelation and psychic insight might come to you twofold or threefold or fourfold. It's going to really amp things up on the mental level. And Jupiter is going to be providing some of the deep insights that Gemini really needs in its everyday life. Gemini needs to be a little more deep versus so superficial and like airy-fairy and wanting to know and do everything all at once, even though that's a brilliant skill. For Gemini, skills are some of the most brilliant. But at the same time, Jupiter brings the depth. Jupiter brings the philosophical and the spiritual elements of the mind into focus. And I think Mercury is going to amplify a lot of that too. So a lot of things might come to us, or we might have a lot of insights that are really deep. And I think that's never a bad thing. And the Venus cazimi is just going to continue, and that's going to continue that illumination of the Venusian within that part of your life. So yeah, this is just incredible, guys. June 6th, the Venus cazimi continues again. Are you kidding me, guys? Are you kidding me? With a new moon in Gemini simultaneously. So this new moon is going to be massive. This is a trigger point for some new intentions to be put in place in the Gemini part of your life. And generally speaking, in any sort of quality or any sort of situation going on, no matter what theme of your life, that involves communication. So if there's anything you are looking to write or projects to start, or if there's any initiations of relationships or group dynamics, anything that has to do with the back and forth ebb and flow of discussion of ideas, whether you're sharing those ideas or coming up with your own ideas, because creativity is still going to be a massive influence with the Venus cazimi. This new moon is an important, intentional, synchronistic moment for you to really plant some new intentional seeds that can trigger and start to evolve itself to the next full moon. So this new moon is massive, absolutely massive, and can give us a lot of opportunity to grow, in regards to mental stuff, so we're not dealing with a Cancer new moon. We're not dealing with a Pisces new moon where we would be more inclined to set some new intentions on a spiritual or emotional level. This is about the mind. This is about how do we discuss and talk? How do we come up with ideas? How do we integrate things through the mind so we can produce things in the real world? How do I discuss and communicate properly, or come up with the greatest ideas, or, figure out how to go about saying something profound, because Jupiter will be adding profound energies to all of the Gemini. And this new moon can really allow some great ideas to be manifested, some great connections to start to grow, So don't be afraid to pursue anything, right, on June 6th. June 7th, Venus finally moves on faster than the sun, so no more cazimi. The moon moves into Cancer, and Saturn squares the sun and Venus. Saturn square by sign, generally with Gemini, is also something to consider for all Gemini transits. So Saturn will square the sun and Venus directly, right? So all that's telling me is that Saturn will be adding some stability to anything that might be a little too crazy and chaotic. So that square might actually be like the check we need. Like, I'm kind of getting a vision of a hockey player just checking a guy against the boards. It's just going to check us. If anything's going a little too crazy, a little too fast, Saturn square is going to kind of just ground everything in. It'll, with Jupiter's influence, it'll allow, kind of things to be, kind of just stay a little bit more grounded, because there's going to be a lot of wild energy in the air, guys. Don't get it twisted. And then when I said second, Saturn square by sign, which generally with Gemini is something also to consider for all Gemini transits. All I'm saying is like, even if there's not an exact aspect going from a sign to a sign, you can still say like a planet is aspecting a sign by its sign. So technically speaking, Saturn squares influence to Gemini will always be a thing. Generally speaking, like there's always going to be an undertone of Saturn influencing Gemini, no matter if there's a hard aspect or not, So that's all I meant by that. So Saturn's always going to have a square influence, just like Pluto is always going to have a trine influence, while Pluto is in Aquarius to Gemini placements, So yeah, guys, that's June 7th. June 8th, Mars is at the anaretic degree. This is a real quick note for June 8th. This just means that Mars will be at the 29th degree of Aries, preparing itself for launch into Taurus. And for me, anaretic degrees are super potent. They are super potent because it is the last moments that it's in the sign it's been occupying for however long its transit has been. And I think the planets and we as humans sort of already know that that's kind of, the story. We kind of know that like, oh my God, Mars is about to ingress and that ingress is going to be big. And, so I think that's just something important to know because the Mars story will be over by the next day. All right, now moving along, nothing really happening until June 12th, in my opinion. So Saturn squares Mercury. So yeah, again, Saturn will be just providing stability to anything crazy going on in Gemini. So Saturn will square Mercury, which is the ruler of Gemini. So we can see any sort of mercurial influence that's really amping up its home turf can kind of be settled down a little bit. We might see a little, a slowing down of Mercury. Like I'm kind of feeling like we might even get like a little bit of a vibe of a retrograde, like a retrograde kind of makes us stop on our tracks and review some things. I kind of feel intuitively that Saturn, when it makes a direct square to Mercury, it might bring that, it might bring that a little bit. It might bring, a little bit of rest and review, to something there. Now, June 14th, Mercury Cazimi. So now Mercury has its turn with the sun. So yeah, guys, I mean, Mercury Cazimis, like I said, Cazimis are auspicious for good vibes, positivity, positive, I think, there could be some luck involved. It's just an amplification and illumination of Mercury. So we can almost say this. I mean, I feel like a lot of, psychic insight comes during Cazimis, to be honest, especially with Mercury. I feel like the amplification of the sun with Mercury can provide such a beautiful clarity is the word I'm looking for. So I feel on June 14th, we can, find, there's going to be something that will be very clear, so maybe after some of those Saturn squares, the Mercury Cazimi is going to be just the medicine we need, June 16th, Mercury and Venus conjunction, which will square Neptune at the same time. So Mercury and Venus come together quite often. And I feel this will just be a beautiful blend of the communication and the fluidity of creativity and beautification of our words. So, I feel like we can expect, dreamy words to be, I feel like poetic is the beautiful word for all of this, Venus providing that dreamy, quality to beautiful communication, beautiful influences on how we think. And that's on the more positive side. On the more challenging side, Neptune can be providing confusion to what we think might be beautiful and creative. And so if anything, Pisces can be providing a little bit of, confusion, potentially. Mixed signals is a good way maybe to put that. Mixed signals from someone or something. So maybe that's something to consider for that transit. Now, June 17th, Mercury-Venus conjunction continues while they ingress into Cancer. So now June 17th comes around and now they're in Cancer. So this is really the beginning of Cancer season in a way, before the sun gets into Cancer. So yes, June 17th. So this is kind of the prelude to what we can expect energetically involving the Mercury Venus tag team. And like, to be honest, guys, in most birth charts, maybe not most birth charts, but at least 50%, I would say, have Venus and Mercury pretty close to each other. So it's not uncommon. But when we have massive conjunctions that are just following each other for a while, they are significant. And for this conjunction and these two planets to be cruising through all the symbolic moments that Gemini, has been bringing to the table for the month, for it to still continue on into Cancer, they're both getting into the water now. They're both getting into the sign of the mother, into nurturing, and of the moon. So we can start to see, I think, a really kind and compassionate and nurturing energy from the Mercurial and the Venusian. The way we communicate could be softer. The way we feel might be a little bit easier and softer. So for example, this is just a hypothetical. If anyone met someone, or if you fell in love, or you started something, that was super amazing in Gemini season, by the time Venus and Mercury get into Cancer and then the sun gets in there, this is almost like when people or you really start to fall in love. This is the moment where love really begins to birth itself. So that's just an example. Not saying we're going to be dealing with love per se, but I feel like whatever Mercury and Venus was bringing up for you, that story will follow itself into the Cancer part of your life, and it will be adding some of that flavor into the new flavor of whatever Cancer will be doing for you. Now, June 21st, the sun enters Cancer, joins Mercury and Venus in a loose conjunction. Loose conjunction means they're not very close together, but they're like 5 to 6 degrees from each other. But the fact that it's such a big moment for Cancer season to begin with Venus and Mercury there, I'm considering it's something we should really look at. And Pluto's influence on Jupiter begins to ease. So this is where Jupiter is at 6 degrees and Pluto is retrograding back and still at 1 degree. So Pluto will not be making a really super strong trine anymore, which means whatever transformation and transpersonal knowings that were coming to the surface, from Jupiter and Pluto, that's going to kind of like integrate and kind of calm down. But still, Pluto is still going to affect Gemini, and Jupiter consistently while Pluto is in Aquarius. So Pluto will be going back into Capricorn, and then after the US election, actually, will go back into Aquarius full time, and then Pluto will be trining Gemini by sign for the next 15 to 20 years. But the rest of Jupiter's transit in Gemini will be loosely affected by Pluto, but these beginning, the end of May and half of June is really strong trine energy from Pluto to Jupiter. So at this point, by June 21st, Pluto's influence will begin to ease off a little bit. But yeah, the sun entering Cancer season begins. This is the official kickoff of summer. This is the official kickoff of settling into whatever the Venus and Mercury story will be carrying with themselves into Cancer, and everything's going to cool off. This is where we really settle into the summer. This is when we really settle in to, or not settle into the summer, but this is when we really begin a new kind of zodiacal cycle, where we're like in the summer, but we're still kind of getting our sea legs for the summer. And Cancer is, I feel like the sun will be in prime time action, longest day of the year, the summer solstice, where we can really start baking in, whatever was forming in Gemini. Now, lastly, June 27th, Mars makes first major aspects. It sextiles Venus in Cancer first. Then a few days later, which I didn't really put into this June 27th chart, a few days later, Saturn in Pisces to close off the month. So Mars makes its first aspect. It sextiles Venus in Cancer. And then Saturn gets involved to close off the month. So, you know, I can say that, you know, Mars will provide, I think, the much needed oomph and action that maybe the Cancer qualities are going to kind of calm down, you know, with the Sun and Venus and Mercury. So when Mars starts giving an aspect, it's just going to sort of be like, you know, I'm kind of getting a vision of an electrical charge, you know, like bringing someone back to life, you know, when someone's like needs a heart, you know, defibrillator. Is that what they call them? So imagine Mars just kind of giving a little shock to Cancer, you know, and it's going to just like ignite something. And we're going to feel that, you know, at the end of the month. So Mars will definitely have an influence there. And then Saturn will, again, I think, provide just a little bit of grounding and stability. And in the most challenging of senses, Saturn may just maybe put up some blocks in some way. Like Saturn may block something from you, you know, because I feel like, you know, from Gemini into Cancer, we're really just flowing. Like there's nothing stopping anything. You know, there's no roadblocks. There's nothing stopping anything, except when, you know, Saturn, I think, squares something in Gemini. I think that's what I said earlier. But I think that's just grounding that we're going to need in Gemini season. But when I'm talking about the end of the month with Saturn's aspect, I think that has more to do with either potentially a block, you know, like something might actually be blocked somewhere in our life, and we're going to have to figure out a new way to go about something. Or Saturn just wants to teach you, hey, like, listen, you know, this is not really working out here, but you need to just sort of find a new way to ground yourself, you know, in one particular area of your life in regarding to the Cancer story. But yeah, guys, Mars, that's going to be a nice little end of the summer there when Mars kind of shocks, you know, we get that first sextile, you know, from Mars. Mars is going to finally have an aspect, you know, after really not having any aspects except for its conjunction with the North Node and Chiron. So, you know, that should be an interesting end of the month heading into July. So yeah, guys, that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this forecast. Please, if you're on YouTube, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you're on Patreon and you stayed to the end, thank you so much for being a member. And I really appreciate you. Until next time, guys.